Hi there, Mr. Reardon here, to walk you through the seventh of the language and grammar topics for AP English Language and Composition this year. Our topic for this activity will be syntax, and as part of talking about syntax, we're going to talk about the syntax rules. That is, the rules uh, that one must follow in order to put together grammatical sentences in English, and the trees or diagrams that uh, linguists use to represent the way words and phrases fit together in languages. So let's jump in here. What is syntax? What does this mean? Well, the basic definition of syntax is the order in which words appear in a sentence. It is word order, right? Often in rhetoric, right, writers will put words in very specific, thought out, and deliberate order, right? Excuse me. Writers will put words in a specific, thought out, and deliberate order in order to achieve some rhetorical effect, right? Or to, right, in literature, it might be to develop some character or build some setting, right? It's the same kind of idea, right? So, um, now, rarely would someone uh, doing rhetorical analysis write a sentence like the author uses syntax to do X, right? Syntax just means word order, right? Every author uses syntax. It's just like every author uses diction, word choice. It is a right. It's a feature of language ultimately, right? Word order. Um, you syntax only becomes a rhetorical choice when right something uh, interesting is done to the word order, right? Typically, rhetorical devices or rhetorical choices with respect to word order or syntax all have their own names. So some examples, right? All of these, I believe, all of these are in the list of rhetorical devices I asked you to learn for language topic 6, right? So right? Parallel structure, right? It's just a repeated grammatical pattern. And of course, we have an example there. Injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere, right? Antithesis is another one, right? An antithesis is just expressing two contrasting ideas in parallel structure in the same sentence, right? In some cases, you can even draw a line straight through the sentence, and you're going to have one idea on one side of the line and the other idea in almost an identical grammatical structure, right, that happens to contrast with the first idea in the second half of the sentence. That's antithesis. Asyndeton, right, that is deliberately removing grammatically unnecessary conjunctions for effect, right? Or excuse me, removing grammatically necessary conjunctions, right? Typically, in order for this to be a complete sentence, you would have to say I came, I saw, comma, and I conquered, right? But the and was removed because it sounds more compelling when you pull that and out, right? Polysyndeton is, of course, the opposite, right? That is adding extra grammatically unnecessary conjunctions for effect, right? So this quote is from Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, right? Let the white folks have their money and power and segregation and sarcasm and big houses and schools and lawns like carpets and books and mostly, let them have their whiteness. There are many, many more. This is just four I chose, four that happen to show up often on the AP exam and that you definitely need to know. But there are hundreds of these things. And I don't think it makes sense for me to just make you memorize all of them. That's a dated practice. But the what I really care about is that you are aware of syntax and that you're aware of its use as a rhetorical device or rhetorical choice. So, a little more on awareness of syntax. Most of the rhetorical devices that involve word order, as I said a moment ago, they make some assumption, right? There is a normal or typical way that English speakers put words together, right? And syntax only becomes rhetorically interesting. It only matters to us as people engaging in rhetorical analysis very soon, right? When an author starts to mess with the norms of English syntax. Now, where does normal come from, right? Where does the language that we perceive as as normal or typical come from? Well, there are grammarians who make those assertions, but linguists would argue that this normal comes from our brains, right? We as humans are programmed to learn a language, and we're programmed to learn language in a very particular way, right? And as part of that, we assign, right, we assign uh, these word we assign words into word classes, right? You happen to know those as parts of speech, and then our brains start to learn from listening to other people speak, the rules that you have to follow in order to put those together, right? You can actually go in the other direction, and you can look at a bunch of utterances that people so that is things people say, and you can go back and construct those rules, and that is one of the major things linguists do, right? What they build, they go listen to languages that no one has ever heard before, right? Or no one has ever studied before, right? Excuse me. And right, and they actually figure out what the syntax rules are, because every language is different. So right, for nearly a century, linguists have been studying exactly how our brains make meanings of words and put them together. And uh, right? For every language, linguists propose rules that you have to follow in order for that language to produce a grammatical and meaningful result from a bunch of words. So, right, what I'd like to do now, right, is I would like to shift away for a moment in talking about the explicit connection between syntax and rhetoric, right? And I want to give you these rules in English as linguists have put them together, right? These rules are very simplified. They're by no means comprehensive. They're not going to. They won't allow you to understand every sentence in English, but they will handle a lot of sentences, and a lot of the sentences you'll be looking at. So, all right, please just remember the following as we move forward into these rules. First of all, you should, um, by the end of this class, really, you should be able to answer a question like, how do the parts of this interesting sentence fit together to accomplish a purpose? Right? Anytime you're faced with a rhetorical act, you should be able to answer that question, right? You should also be aware of the structural nature of your own sentences as you write. You should be able to play around with options, right? And both when we're talking about other people's text, and we're also talking about your own text, your own writing, you should be able to use the language of syntax to talk about how those sentences are put together. Right? You should be able to say things like, this noun phrase over here is right is the object of this verb, and I made this decision because blank, right? Now, simply, right, my goal in having you look at these rules and do some things with them, right, build trees with them, is to raise your awareness and to give you a sense, a sense of the almost mathematical logic that goes behind language, that you need to be aware of. Right, my logic here is that if you can learn these rules and you can build a few syntax trees, your natural awareness of syntax and of the role of word order in the things you read and the things you write will increase. Right, it's okay if the rules are a bit confusing to you. Right, and when I assess your understanding of syntax, right, I would only ask you about them in a really limited way, right? I wouldn't, for example, ask you on an assessment to build an entire syntax tree, right? I wouldn't have you do that. I might give you an almost complete syntax tree and tell you like what would go in this spot, for example. So a little easier. So don't worry too much. But this is an AP class, and I want you to right. I really want to challenge you, and challenge your understanding of language, even if I'm not necessarily assessing you on the full intensity of it. So here we go. The English syntax rules. First thing, a sentence. Sentence in syntax is made up of a noun phrase followed by a verb phrase, right? And sometimes there is a tense word, or in a few cases, two tense words that intervene between them, right? So this is how we're going to represent it. The S sentence is brown, right? And that is composed of, that's what the arrow means, composed of um, a noun phrase, followed by an optional tense word, followed by a verb phrase, right? So the dog ran out the door. Right? The dog has run out the door, right? Has is that tense word. Okay, a noun phrase is made up of a few things. One or zero determiners, right? There will never be more than one. So one or zero, right? Zero or more adjectives, right? We, by the way, will call zero or more adjectives put together an adjective phrase a little bit later on, right? One or more nouns is part of a noun phrase, and these may be pronouns. Remember, a pronoun stands in as a noun in all cases, and so pronouns are automatically nouns, right? And also sometimes pronouns are implied or nouns are implied in utterances, and so right, it may not be there, but it's implied, and it still functions as a noun. And then, of course, you can have one or zero prepositional phrases at the end of the noun phrase. So this is how it looks when we put all those pieces together. Um, don't be alarmed. It'll make perfect sense when I talk through it. You have a noun phrase that is composed of one or zero determiners, right? And then right, an adjective phrase, so one or more adjectives, one or more nouns. Remember, our noun in English, you can pile nouns on top of each other, like peanut butter jar lid factory, right? And you can end up and they function as a single noun, right? And then you can have an optional one or zero prepositional phrases at the end. Some examples, right? By the way, I have adjectives by themselves labeled yellow, right? Because I haven't given you the rule for adjective phrase yet. So the fat, ugly family dog with three legs, right? This is a noun phrase, right? You have that the determiner, fat and ugly together. They're an adjective phrase, two individual adjectives. Family dog, right? Two nouns, and then right the technically family dog is a noun phrase, even by itself, but we're going to label it as two nouns for now. And then right the with three legs prepositional phrase. Righty. So an adverb phrase is made up of the following pieces: zero or more adverb phrases. Yes, right, and yet this is a sort of funny here, right? It's recursive. Um, an adverb phrase can be made up of zero adverb phrases plus an adverb. So just one adverb by itself is automatically an adverb phrase. Or it can be made up of one adverb phrase and an adverb, or it can be made up of several adverb phrases and an adverb. So what ends up happening is that several adverbs in a row all together can end up being one adverb phrase. It doesn't matter how many, right? Please excuse the meowing in the background if you can hear it. There's nothing I can do about it. Alrighty, so um, this is how it looks, right? Oh my, that does not look the way it's supposed to. I apologize. That is what you should be looking at, right? Adverb phrase is made up of, right, an adverb phrase followed by an adverb. Alrighty. Mm. I'm going to hop back here because I need to tell you about the prepositional phrase. You should have this one marked prepositional phrase, and that's where it's going to go in your notes, right? A prepositional phrase is composed of one preposition plus a noun phrase, right? One preposition plus a noun phrase. Be sure you pause right now and get that in your notes. You can see the examples here, right? The fat, ugly dog with three legs, right? You still have those adjectives in there, right? But the with is the preposition, right? And then the three legs together are three adjective legs noun make up a noun phrase. Room 219, two nouns make up a noun phrase. In, right, is the preposition there, right? It's telling you what kind of skunk, right? It's the skunk in room 219, right? Or a skunk in room 219. So it's actually helping to modify that noun. Okay, and I just talked to you about adverb phrase. So an adjective phrase is made up of zero or more adverbs, right? Remember, that's an adverb phrase, right? With some restrictions, right? There are some rules, some ways that you can't actually put those together, right? Or there are some places where you can't start an adjective phrase with adverbs, right? And then after that, an adjective phrase contains one or more adjectives, again with some restrictions, right? There are some places where sometimes where you can't have more than one, or you can't yeah, you can't have more than one. And then the um, one you can have one or zero prepositional phrases unless a noun follows the adjective phrase, in which case you cannot put a prepositional phrase after an adjective in an adjective phrase. All right, lots of blah blah blah, lots of words. What does that mean? It's much simpler if you look at it this way. An adjective phrase can be made up of, right, an optional adverb phrase. Don't need it if though. Um, you have to have at least one adjective, but you could also have more, right? And then a prepositional phrase that is also optional. Some examples: the extraordinarily fat family dog, right? That pink there, by the way, adverbs by themselves are pink, right? But together, right? One adverb, but remember, one adverb is also an adverb phrase, right? So, right, determiner the, extraordinarily adverb phrase, right? Fat, adjective, family dog, right? That's the noun that would, of course, go after that. The extraordinarily fat, in that case, is the adverb phrase, or is, excuse me, adjective phrase. The family dog. Now, here's another example of how adjective phrases might show up in sentences. The determiner, family dog, noun phrase, is, we have a nice verb there, fat, adjective, from its treats. So there, all you have for the adverbial phrase there at the end is an adjective, fat, followed by the prepositional phrase, from its treats. We're learning why it's fat, or why the dog is fat. Now, here's an example. When I said a moment ago that on that third bullet point, the right, you can't have a prepositional phrase. Um, uh, right, you can't have a prepositional phrase at the end of an adjective phrase if a noun comes after. Right. So, right, look at this last sentence. I put a little star there. When a star is near a sentence, it means it's wrong. The extraordinarily fat from its treats family dog. Right, that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. So because family dog is a noun phrase, right, two nouns, and so right, you can't put that prepositional phrase after fat. It's not going to work. It only works when there's no noun after it. Okay. Here we go. So a verb phrase is made up of the following. Right? A verb, its object or objects, right? An adverbial phrase, unless the object is an adjective, right? Three things. Right? A verb, its object or objects, and then an adverbial phrase or an adverb phrase, unless the object is an adjective, right? You can't put an adverbial phrase after the verb and its object if there is an adjective there. It doesn't make sense. So here we go. Right. By the way, I just wanted to point out that this verb phrase is composed of verb, object, adverb phrase. Right. That is a very general statement of much more specific verb phrase rules, and you can actually see those verb phrase rules down there in the corner. Right. And so how the verb phrase actually ends up looking is dependent on what kind of verb it is. And this is why I had you learn the verb types. Right. So, a verb phrase can be made up of an intransitive verb. And so you can see the dog runs. Right. The runs does not have an object. And so, right, the runs by itself is the intransitive verb, and that's a verb phrase. You can also have a transitive verb plus its object, which is a noun phrase, right? The dog eats treats, right? The treats by itself is one noun, which is a noun phrase. And then what does it eat? It eats the treats, right? Or it eats treats. And so, right, eats, transitive verb, noun phrase. All right. Next one here, you have this one is the same thing, transitive verb, noun phrase, right? But I put a little adverbial phrase on the end so you could see how it sounds when you add the adverbial phrase, right? Um, the dog eats treats very slowly. All right, ditransitive verb, right? Again, two objects, right? So the dog gave his owner the ball. His owner is one noun phrase. The ball is another noun phrase. And you know that because you have two determiners, right? You can't have more than one determiner in a noun phrase. So in one noun phrase anyway, without some other syntactical piece first encompassing that noun phrase. So and then we have the last one here. The dog is sick. So sick again is an adjective, and so I'm sorry. Actually, this right here should say instead of saying v sub c noun phrase, it should say v sub c ap adjective phrase. So be sure you write down ap there, ap, not np. Alrighty. So these are all the phrase structure rules, right? The phrase structure rules let you build tree-like structures that show you the structures of sentences. And we will call these tree structures syntax trees. So here are the steps to building a syntax tree, simplified, right? You need to identify all the parts of speech in a sentence, right? Every last one of them. Second step, you have to use diagonal branches to bring together the parts of the sentence the rules allow you to put together, and you have to put them together under phrase headings, right? So you have to go back and look at the rules, and you have to determine which pieces of the sentences can be put together legally under phrase headings, right? Your goal is to end up with a single a single sentence, without breaking any of the syntax rules, right? So an example would be helpful here. Right, the dog runs. Right, I'm identifying the parts of speech. Step one. The is a determiner, dog is a noun, runs intransitive verb. Alrighty. So I happen to know, right, determiner and noun, right? A determiner and noun take right next to each other can be a noun phrase, right? I also happen to know that an intransitive verb by itself can be a verb phrase, right? The rule for a sentence says that a sentence is composed of one noun phrase, optional tense markers, and one verb phrase. So NPVP makes a sentence. There it is. That is a complete syntax tree for the sentence "the dog runs" that indicates its structure. Alrighty. Now we're going to do a much more challenging one. You might consider copying the sentence into your notes and actually, I think it's already there. So look at the sentence in your notes, right? Um, and then try to do it yourself based on the rules. You might struggle, and that's okay. And then come back to the video and listen to me go through it. So here we go. Celeste is a noun. Is transitive verb. I know that because a very fun video game is obviously, like, the video game's a noun, right? That D is a determiner. I can tell immediately there's going to be a noun phrase somewhere, right? Determiner a, right? Very is an adverb, right? Fun is an adjective. Video game, or video is a noun. Game is a noun, right? For is a preposition. The determiner, noun, computer. Alrighty, so as I look at this here, I just have to sort of think about what I recognize, and I could really start anywhere I want. Now, um, I think I decided here that the smallest two pieces I immediately noticed that I knew fit together were the determiner and noun at the end, the computer. Oh wait, actually, backing up, this noun at the beginning by itself, right? This noun by itself is can function as a noun phrase. And then I want to look at the end, the computer. Determiner, noun, noun phrase. That can be a noun phrase. Oh, hey, look, there's a preposition directly before it. That preposition, remember, our phrase structure rules say that a preposition plus a noun phrase is a prepositional phrase, right? So there it is. We have a prepositional phrase. Okay, so where do we look next? Well, I see a determiner. When I see a determiner, that means there's probably going to be a noun phrase, right? And so, right, I look at the other elements there, and I see, okay, determiner, adverb, adjective, noun, noun, right? Actually, there are some things in there that can't be part of a noun phrase, right? Like an adverb, right? So I have to figure out how to deal with that. Well, I know that one adverb by itself can be an adverbial phrase, right? And I also know that one adverbial phrase plus an adjective can be an adjective phrase. Right? Now, I can follow the noun phrase rule, right? Determiner, adjective phrase, multiple nouns, prepositional phrase at the end there. Boom, 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 boom. Noun phrase. We have a transitive verb. A transitive verb requires one noun phrase as its argument. There's our one noun phrase. We have a verb phrase. Noun phrase, verb phrase makes a sentence. There it is. Thank you very much.